What up, JP Nation? It's your boy JP. If you're a returning subscriber, welcome back to my channel. If you're a new subscriber, welcome to my channel where we do basketball reaction videos. If you love the game of basketball like I do, make sure you subscribe to ItzJustJP. Down below, click notification bell. You know where our next upload is. Today we are reacting to NBA fans are wrong about Larry Bird. I'm very intrigued to see what this person has to say from Tim Talks Basketball. So let me know what you want me to react to next, and definitely comment down below your thoughts about the video too as well. Another Larry Bird reaction video. I always love to react to Larry Bird because Larry Bird was unbelievable. So without further ado, let's get into the video. I'm intrigued to see what he got to say.
What if I asked you to tell me what comes to mind when you hear the name Larry Bird? You would probably think of things such as his great shooting. After all, Larry Bird had multiple 50, 40, 90 seasons.
Yep.
And who can forget seeing him famously win the three-point contest in his warm-up gear? Perhaps you would think of his crazy passing. After all, you can find highlight after highlight of just some of the most ridiculous passes in NBA history. Perhaps you would think of the great rivalry between him and Magic Johnson. After all, it's hard to talk about one without the other. Or you could think of individual moments such as Larry Bird hitting game winners, or playing a game with only his left hand.
Yep.
All of these are great Larry Bird things. However, what many fans probably don't think about is Larry Bird's defense. After all, the terms Larry Bird and defense aren't commonly associated. Because Larry Bird was unathletic, surely he couldn't play defense properly. And the more and more I consume NBA discourse, a very commonly held opinion today is that Larry Bird was not a great defender. But what if I were to tell you that this is something NBA fans get totally wrong about Larry Bird? And as time goes by, more and more people just assume he was a bad defender. Or at the very least, not very good.
Come on.
And I get it, you look at Larry Bird, you don't particularly see the most athletic specimen ever. And you think, sure, he can play great offense. However, surely he got exposed defensively, right? Or at least they would hide him away. Well, that is precisely what I used to believe about Larry Bird, and what I find many people in the NBA community still believe to this day. It's hard to have a debate ranking players all time without someone knocking Larry Bird because they assumed he was a bad defensive player because he was unathletic. However, the more and more I dug into the facts, the more I realized how truly incorrect this idea was. Larry Bird was actually a very good to great defender. Now, I never got to watch Larry Bird play live, as his career was well before my lifetime, but I also think I can share a unique perspective because I changed my perception around Larry Bird as I watched more highlights and as I dug into the numbers. But before I get into the major reasons why Larry Bird was actually a very good defender, first I want to confront what I believe is the biggest reason people undervalue his defense, which is the fact that Larry Bird is seen as unathletic. Now, admittedly, Larry Bird wasn't one of the best athletes in the league, but he also wasn't as unathletic as people made it out to seem. And when I really started to watch more Larry Bird highlights, I realized he was a lot quicker and more athletic than people claimed. And I believe that this quote by Dave Cowens, who played with Bird early in his career, perfectly sums it up. People always say he wasn't fast, but Bird was quick. He had a great first step and could get by people. And he could handle the ball with that first step. He had a quick mind and a quick release. There wasn't anything that he did not do well. He was a really tough cover for the other team. And when you really look at Larry Bird highlights, especially in the earlier part of his career, you can see him sprinting up and down the court with some of the best athletes. There are other great moments, such as him famously dunking on Dennis Rodman. I think a major part of the reason people undervalue his athleticism is the way he looked in the last few seasons of his career, where Larry Bird famously had a lot of back issues. We are often heavily influenced by the most recent things we see of players, which in turn I think has led people to undervaluing his athleticism and by extension his defense even more. After all, how could someone as slow as Larry Bird play proper defense? Now, after explaining why Larry Bird was actually a lot more athletic than people claim, I still think it's important to acknowledge that while athleticism certainly helps with defense, I still find people overvalue it and undervalue other things such as defensive instincts and defensive IQ. However, Larry Bird had great awareness and instincts on the defensive end, so he was a strong team defender, and he was also athletic enough with great instincts to play some pretty good individual defense. Not to mention, Larry Bird was pretty good at using his 6'10" height to at least bother the offensive players. But something I feel which has been lost with time is that Larry Bird was actually named to the All-Defensive Second Team 3 times before injuries slowed him down towards the end of his career.
I mean, yeah, for all the people that said Larry Bird did not play no defense, 3 all-defensive selections. 3 all-defensive selections. And you saying Larry Bird can't play a lick of defense. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Oh my God. Yes, he can play defense. He can play defense. And that Celtics team was a really good defensive team. Robert Parrish leading that defensive unit, along with Mikal, who was a really good defensive player. Dennis Johnson, one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. Larry Bird, a good defender himself. Man, Bill Walton too. I mean, when they got Bill Walton, but yeah, come on, man, come on, just come on, just stop. That's all you need to know. 3 all defensive selections. Just stop. That ridiculous steal in '87 against the Pistons, when he intercepted the pass that Isaiah Thomas was trying to throw to Bill and Bill, stole the ball. That's defense.
Career. So he must have been acknowledged as a pretty good defender to make these all-defensive teams multiple times. Now I get it, awards aren't everything, but they can reflect the media and fans' perception around the player. So it's very hard to believe that if the NBA media at the time thought he was a good defender, that somehow he was just tricking everyone. In addition to the media at the time awarding him these all-defensive team selections, the advanced stats strongly support the idea that Larry Bird was a good defender. Now, I understand that advanced stats shouldn't be the only thing you look at, but I also think that they can at least provide more context and more information to use alongside accolades and the eye test. Furthermore, advanced stats can provide a better picture than simply going off of points, rebounds, and assists, because the advanced stats have ways of accounting for other factors, such as changes in pace, depending on the era you played in. And looking at Larry Bird's advanced defensive stats, they are all very good to great. Now first, as the saying goes, the defensive possession doesn't end until the defensive rebound is secured, and Larry Bird was a very strong defensive rebounder who would usually get the break going with quick outlet passes. And defensive rebounding is a very big part of defense, and even as a small forward, Larry Bird averaged 8 defensive rebounds per game. But looking at the advanced stat defensive rebounding percentage, Larry Bird currently sits 74th all-time with a defensive rebounding percentage of 22.37. For context, this is above other small forwards like LeBron, Kawhi, Durant, and above many other great defensive rebounders.
As a LeBron fan, and then you hear other LeBron fans saying LeBron's a better rebounder than Larry Bird. No, he's not a better rebounder than Larry Bird. I am sorry. Larry Bird averaged 10 rebounds in his career. 10 rebounds a game in his career. Come on now. That's more than Patrick Ewing. And Patrick Ewing's a center. One of the best centers of all time. That's more than Patrick Ewing. Come on now. Come on. Larry Bird was a great rebounder. He was a great rebounder. Come on now.
Of course, I understand this is only a single aspect of defense, and I'm not saying that ranking higher than a different player in a certain category makes you better defensively. But it's only to show that if Larry Bird consistently ranks high in the advanced defensive stats, where you typically find many of the best defenders sitting at the top of these lists, then in all likelihood, Larry Bird was also probably a very good defender. For context, looking at defensive rebounding percentage, players like Gobert, Dwight Howard, Rodman, Duncan, Garnett, they all sit at the very top. Now, admittedly, he's only ranked 250th all-time for block percentage. However, that's still pretty good when you consider the sheer number of crazy good athletes the NBA has seen. And block percentage will skew more towards the power forwards and the centers. So for context, Michael Jordan ranks 217th, while Kawhi Leonard ranks 194th and LeBron is 191. Moving on to a different category, Larry Bird ranks a little higher in steal percentage, finishing 133rd on the all-time list with a 2.16 career steal percentage. Now, even looking at the basic stats, Larry Bird was great at getting steals and would average 1.7 steals for his entire career. Because after all, Bird's most famous defensive play was the steal in Game 5 of the 1987 Conference Finals. And while Larry Bird was not John Stockton when it came to steals, his instincts and feel for the game made him a threat to get tons of steals. In addition, Larry Bird ranks 61st all-time in defensive rating with a defensive rating of 101.44. Now, defensive rating can be complicated. However, it's still a useful stat to use alongside the others when evaluating who are good defenders. And it's no surprise that many of the all-time greatest defenders sit at the very top of this list. Moreover, Larry Bird ranks at the crazy position of 37th in defensive box plus minus, with a defensive box plus minus of 1.77. What is probably another surprise is that Larry Bird ranks 30th all-time in defensive win shares, with a defensive win share of 59 for his career. And sure, win shares can be a complicated stat. For context, the players with the 5 best defensive win shares are Bill Russell, Tim Duncan, Kareem, Olajuwon, and Wilt, all of which are unanimously seen as some of the very best defenders in history. So it's only logical to assume that if the very best defenders in league history rank at the very top of the defensive stat, then the defensive stat probably has some merit when it comes to determining if you're a good defender when you use it alongside other stats, accolades, and the eye test. And another Larry Bird accomplishment, which often gets glossed over, is the fact that Larry Bird led the league in defensive win shares 4 times. Admittedly, while advanced stats are a way of adding more clarity, they do have some limits and should be used in addition to other things. Perhaps you really don't care about advanced stats and really rely on the eye test. I suppose the tricky thing about the eye test is that everyone has different opinions on what passes the eye test for them. But from everything I watched, I truly believe Bird passes the eye test. From watching highlights of him playing games, in the playoffs, and the regular season, he's athletic enough and moves well enough laterally to play good individual defense. But once you add in his phenomenal instincts, I think it would surprise a lot of people how great he is with anticipation, and how this helps him rack up the steals and secure a ton of defensive rebounds. Not to mention he was great at using his height to at least bother offensive players with good contest. Keep in mind, he is 6'10". And you might still say, well, you didn't watch him live, so how can you really tell? Some YouTube highlights will never paint a proper picture. And to that I would answer, well, the media covering the league at the time must have thought he was a good defender because he got multiple All-NBA defensive team selections. And even if you say, well, these selections alone don't prove he was a good defender, these used in conjunction with great defensive stats are a pretty good indicator that he was a very good defender. And to be fair, as the 80s went on, the Celtics surrounded Bird with other strong defenders, Kevin McHale, Dennis Johnson. But even looking back at articles and headlines and the media awards, Larry Bird was viewed by most of the time as a pretty strong defender on the team, not as any kind of liability. I truly believe that as more and more time has gone by since Larry Bird's career, especially the peak of his career, many more NBA fans start to cling to these narratives that he was incredibly unathletic, he was slow, he wasn't a good defender, and as this happens more and more, the reality of the situation gets lost with time. All of this is to say Larry Bird was a very good to great defender, and I believe that his defensive accolades, the advanced defensive stats, and the eye test all back this up.
And great analysis and points from Tim Talks Basketball. The only thing I wish is that we would have had like different clips of Larry Bird highlights instead of seeing the same like 3 or 4 same clips of Larry Bird. But you know, that's just just a little thing. But he's right though. I mean, like everybody's like, oh man, Larry Bird's not a great defender. I'm like, bro, you are just looking at the eye test. Like, oh yeah, he's unathletic, he's slow. Come on, man, stop it. Please stop it. This dude led the league in defensive win shares. Winning in defense. 4 times. 4 times. 1.7 steals per game in his career. And you saying Larry Bird's not a great defender. And made all NBA, all defensive teams 3 times. And you saying he's not a great defender. I mean, goodness gracious, like, what does it take for people to understand that he was a good defender? He was a good defender. Good defender. I mean, like, what you want Larry Bird to do? You want him to play in today's era and then just, like, get more steals? Like, I mean, look, if you want to look for the best games of Larry Bird playing really good defense, number one, I would say the best one you would need to look at is the 86 NBA Finals, Game 6, between the Celtics and the Rockets. Larry Bird himself said that was the best game he ever played because he was so prepared. He was playing both sides. He was giving it to him offensively. He was doing his thing defensively. He was getting rebounds, offense, defensive rebounds. Like, that was the best game he ever played. Look at that tape. Look at that tape. And then you'll be convinced that Lebron was a good defender. You know, like almost that quadruple double against the Utah Jazz. Got 9 steals. Got 9 steals in the game. So I just don't understand. I just don't understand the hate. It must be them young fans, man. It must be the young fans or fans that just do not like Lebron and just want to disrespect Lebron. I mean, goodness gracious, man. Like, dude was unbelievable defensively. He was unbelievable. So stop. Just stop. But definitely let me know in the comments below regarding Lebron and his defense and why NBA fans, like them young fans, are so wrong about Lebron's defense. Please let me know in the comments. Let me know what you want me to react to next. Make sure you subscribe to ItzJustJP for more content. Click the notification bell. You know what our next upload is. Shout out to that YouTuber making a great analysis and points. Just make sure you have a lot more clips of Lebron highlights. So that's all I need. That's all I want to let him know. But I'm JP. Y'all, this is a wonderful day. Peace.